Hey, I'm Raoul Bhaneja, and you're listening to the SyFy Sistas podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the SyFy Sistas podcast, where we give you our point of view. I'm Tamia Harper, and today I'm joined by my sisters, Yvette Blackman-Tom.
Hello.
And Franny T.
What's happening?
What's happening, Fran? What's happening is, as always, say it with me, we've got a great show.
Real show.
That's right. That's right.
We got a really good show because we are super stoked. So first of all, we've been loving Starfleet Academy, and we are so happy to have a Starfleet Academy cast member with us today, but we're really happy because this man is incredible. And we've had a couple of Renaissance men and women on this program, and I consider this gentleman to be one of them. He's an actor, a producer, a writer. He's a badass musician, and we're gonna talk about that for real. This man is a virtuoso, and we are so delighted to have him, Raoul Bhaneja, who plays Chancellor Kelric on Starfleet Academy. Welcome to the SyFy Sistas show.
Oh, wow. What an intro. Man, I just need to play that. I just need to have that on my phone. It's like with me all the time. Just replay that back on those days when I bombed an audition or I'm playing a gig and nobody's clapping. I just got to run that. I'm good. The SyFy Sistas approve.
That's
I'm
right.
going to be okay. I'm going to be okay.
You definitely got the SyFy Sistas stamp of approval. It's like three snaps up in a circle.
Oh my God. The young kids are going, what?
Well, yeah, they have no clue. They have no clue.
Look, there's enough other young people on Starfleet Academy for them to relate to, okay? Like, it's okay. I'm 51, all right? There's got to be somebody who's 51 on the show you talk to, right? The kids, they say all kinds of things I don't understand, so that's fine.
Turnabout is fair play, I say. Like, I can't understand your language. You have no idea what I'm talking about. We'll meet in the middle somewhere.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Like, they don't remember Living Color. They don't.
No,
They weren't alive.
they literally weren't alive.
They literally were not alive.
They were not.
I know.
Oh,
So, we are so excited to have you on the show. As we were saying before we came on, we love Chancellor Kelric. I did not think I was going to like him when I first met him. I was like, okay, this guy. But he's a man of many surprises and surprising depth, and just like me, a lover of tea.
Well, that's not that different from Raoul. I have my West Helena, Arkansas King Biscuit Time mug here
Nice.
that I've got from being one of the. It was one of the longest running blues shows on the radio in America.
I remember
wow.
that show.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't say I'm too much like Kelric, but when it comes to tea, I'm down with teas. I'm half Indian and half Irish, right? So in the pandemic. Instead of getting deep into alcohol, my coping mechanism became tea, because that's like my ancestral go-to, right?
Yeah.
The Indians and the Irish are like crazy tea people.
Tea.
So tea with milk. I don't do herbal teas or that. I mean, that's fine. Do your thing.
Okay.
But for me, it's like black tea with milk. That's my thing. No sugar anymore. You got to watch the sugar, right? So this is I like to think that's kind of where I'm similar to Kelric, and maybe not so much in some of the other uptight departments.
You're not wowing that tight, huh?
No, my wife might disagree, actually.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So with this being this is your first Star Trek role, correct?
Yeah.
Right. Because we would know.
Well,
Yes.
now I'll tell you,
Star Trek.
I auditioned quite a few times
Did you?
for Discovery.
Oh.
But of course, when you're an actor, you get all these auditions and they're all kind of in code, right? Like it's not the actual character's name. It's not an actual scene. And sometimes they just send you, a page. And, in the beginning, I was like, oh, Star Trek, this will be cool. Discovery. Wow. All right. Well, I don't know what this is. I can't remember what it was called. But I was like, okay, great. And then, I auditioned for a really good part at the beginning. And then every time I auditioned, the part kind of got smaller. And I wasn't getting them. And I was like, and I started to get really cheesed because I was like, how could they not see my brilliance? And then I did a show called Clarice for CBS. Which was created by Alex Kurtzman, and I had a great part in the season that was of Clarice. And then after that, I said to my agent, "Okay, don't submit me for anything in Discovery or any of those shows that's small, because Alex Kurtzman just hired me to do like 7 episodes of Clarice, so he knows who I am. So let's wait." And then I waited and I waited and waited, and then out of the blue came this audition for this new show. And I went back to my email and I was like, man, I still have Alex's email. So I auditioned for it, and then I just did the thing, an actor does, which is, hey, Alex, Raoul Bhaneja here. You may remember me from such roles as, no, but remember me, been a couple years. Listen, I know a bazillion people are going to audition for this role, but I just wanted to say it looks really interesting and it would be fun to work with you again, goodbye. And when you send those emails, you can have no expectation of a response, right? Because there's all maybe they've already cast somebody else, maybe he's forgotten who you are, maybe you're right in consideration for it and they don't want to say anything. So I just kind of sent that into the cyberspace and just let it go. Should I tell this story? Is it okay if I tell this story? I'm off talking about myself.
Of course.
Is that okay? All right.
Yeah.
It's the origin story here. So.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's where the question was going anyway. So
okay,
yes.
Okay, good. So then I don't hear anything for about a week. And I was like, okay, well, and as you know, you guys have spoken to so many actors over the years, you then just have to let it go, right? Because you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to get this one, which is, 90% of the stuff you don't get. It's just how it goes, So I was like, okay, well, Clarice was fun. I had an amazing time. And then my agent called me and said, you have a Zoom callback tomorrow or in 2 days with Holly Hunter. And I was like, oh, okay. Then your actor brain goes, okay, wait a second. This is a whole other deal. Because now you're like, there's no way Holly Hunter's on the Zoom with 20 different people.
Right.
They're not going to, she doesn't have that kind of time. She's very dedicated to our show. And I've actually never asked how many people were in that round. But I was like, you just know as an actor, if Holly's on it and Alex. So, I go down, my setup is just like this, but it's in my kitchen. I got my little audition screen and my light and my laptop, and I set it all up. And then I click on the Zoom link, and you're just like, okay, no problem. This is cool. It's so weird. In the old days, we used to go into an audition room and everyone was sitting there. And now, since COVID, we're all doing it from our bathrooms, living rooms, kitchens,
closets.
Oh my God, my sound booth is just back in, literally. I built a sound booth in my closet because I was doing audiobooks in COVID, and my son was doing animation. Right behind the screen is a little vocal booth I have. Anyways.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I'm getting on the Zoom, and just like our Zoom opened, as everyone will know now because we all use Zoom, is the Zoom opened, and I saw 20 windows. So then I got kind of more excited and nervous because I was like, oh, not only is it's not Alex Kurtzman and Holly and the casting director. It's there's all these other people on it. And from my experience, of testing in Hollywood over the years, that was the experience of going into a room and there's 11 people in suits sitting in a boardroom, completely bored out of their minds, and you somehow have to impress them. So it was sort of that version. I was like, that made me realize, oh gosh, this is even closer than I thought. This is even more down to the final people. But again, you have to just go whatever, So, and, Alex is sort of known for it, but, so then I do the callback, and, Alex is really involved in it, which is great. He really works you. He wants to try the scene this way, try the scene that way. And the whole time, I'm doing it with Holly on the other side of Zoom, and, it's Zoom. So sometimes it cuts out or we don't get the last word.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But anyways, we got to the end of it and it was over. Okay, I did the best I could, and that doesn't always happen because sometimes you screw them up, or the vibe isn't right. But I was like, okay, I did the best I could. I laid it out on the line, and then this is interesting character because I knew even from the little bits I had, and actually, thank God, the scenes I had were actually the scenes from the episodes.
Okay.
So it was enough of the character to kind of have an understanding, and I kind of knew, okay, this is going to be a character that has to be, dramatic and comedic.
Right.
Like so many of the great characters in Star Trek, where there is a sense of humor to them, but when the crap hits the fan, you have to believe that this person knows what they're doing, or they're going to fight to the death for their students, or whatever. So I felt good about it, and then my agent was like, "Listen, you'll hear either way in a day or two, I'm sure." And I was like, "Okay, all right." And then, again, days and days go by, and all this other stuff happens behind the scenes, and I just had to get to the point where I was like, let it go. So my agent just kind of gave a deadline and said, look, guys, I know you're doing your thing. I actually had the freakish thing of being on another series that needed me to say if I was going to be available or not.
Wow.
So I just kind of had to say, which never happens, right? It never happens, ever happens. So then I sort of had to go guys, you just have to make a decision because I can't lose this other job and then have you guys say, hey, we've gone another direction.
Right.
And so we sort of gave a deadline, and then probably what I thought was an hour after the deadline, I got to that point where I was like, okay, let it go. It's over. You're not going to be on Star Trek. You're not going to be on a job that's going to change your life. You're not going to be on a podcast with the SyFy Sistas. Just let it go, man. Just let it totally go.
God.
And then I get a call from my agent saying, you got the part. They're going to offer it to you officially on Monday. Have a great weekend. Click.
Oh, wow.
Okay. All right. And in the end, it all worked out. But
it did.
But it was it was one of those things where you just don't know what's going to happen, and I couldn't really have imagined then kind of what it would turn into. It's so then you get the scripts and you read it, and oh man, I'm in half the season. That's great. And then we're halfway shooting season 1, and then we find out we're doing another season. And then I get to be in season 2 as well. So yeah, it's funny how an actor's trajectory. Even in kind of a small way, can change when you get opportunities that are something special. Like, to answer your question 9 minutes ago, when you get to enter the Star Trek universe for the first time. Do you see that? You asked me the question 9 minutes ago.
Yeah, you did.
And I answered it.
I told you, no heavy lifting for us.
You're not gonna get a word in. You're not getting a word.
That's okay.
In
You know what? And we will be wrapped.
We'll be like,
well, nobody else knows that story. At least nobody else knows that. So there we go. Exclusive.
That's
awesome.
Exclusive. I love it. I love it. I wanted to ask you real quick. What is your Star Trek story before you got the role?
I would say, I'm 51. So when I was growing up, when I was a kid, it was for so many of us around my age, original series in reruns, right? Just all the time. It would be Saturday lunchtime after, cartoons would be in the morning, then early afternoon or right around lunchtime programming when I was growing up, there'd be Star Trek.
Wow.
So 100%. Now, I wasn't a Trekkie in the sense that I could tell you from when I was a kid, oh, this episode's named that. And it wasn't like that back then because you didn't, you had to be so hardcore to know that because
you did.
Yeah.
It wasn't on, you didn't just go on the internet and go, oh, what was this? And, there was no IMDb or anything. So only the true diehards knew it like that. And I wasn't one of them. And then when Next Generation started, I was kind of in the beginning of, I was in an arts high school and I was studying drama. And then when that started to take off, then towards the end of high school, I went to the National Theatre School of Canada and got my classical actor training. National Theatre School of Canada is a lot like our version of Juilliard, I would say. In terms of in terms of how actors train, and we had some of the same teachers taught at both places. So just to give people an idea. So I barely watched TV once that happened, but I definitely saw and got into some of Next Generation. And of course, the crazy thing was I knew Patrick Stewart from watching the BBC Shakespeare Hamlet.
Yeah.
Where he plays Claudius opposite Derek Jacobi.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And they were only like they weren't that different in age, but
Right.
but because Patrick was bald so young, he played older a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, he's looked the same for like 40 years. You're like,
He
oh my
really
God,
has.
that's the advantage. That's the advantage of being a clean head, man. It's like,
Right.
wow, you look the
It's
same
like you
forever,
don't
man.
age, buddy.
Yeah. The rest of us are like, please live forever, live forever.
Stay forever.
So it's funny, like I kind of knew Patrick Stewart through that, but I knew he was a Shakespearean actor, and I was totally beginning my life as a actor, learning about Shakespeare. So, and then of course, like William Shatner is kind of royalty in
Right.
Canada because William Shatner got to start doing Shakespeare in Montreal, and one of his buddies in Montreal was Christopher Plummer, who of course ends up being in Undiscovered Country. And
He
then
says
they were
he's
at
not a Trekkie. Okay, come on.
well, I did my research. But and those two guys start in the 1950s at the Stratford Shakespeare Festival, which is one of our most important cultural institutions in Canada.
Yeah.
And they came up together and like Shatner understudied for Christopher Plummer. And one night Christopher Plummer was so sick he had to go to hospital, and then Shatner goes on for him, and Shatner does. And when you understudy, you're supposed to basically do the part like the person you're covering.
Yes.
And Shatner comes out and probably was like, "Now it's my turn. God damn you, Christopher Plummer!
You know he did.
I ain't your understudy, buddy." And he came out and supposedly he did the whole thing like totally differently, completely his own take on the entire part. And the next day, man, Plummer pulled himself out of hospital to get back on stage. So, like those are that's the kind of legendary status, just even as theater people, that those guys have. And so, I think a lot of Canadians have looked for the Canadians who have ended up in Star Trek all through the different series and different shows.
Yeah.
And so,
sure.
and for me, coming also from a theater background and a Shakespeare background, for me, that's special, that in my own tiny way, I'm like this Canadian Shakespeare guy who's found his own tiny, not comparing it to any of those guys, but, just found my own tiny little place in the giant sort of pantheon of this universe of characters and shows. So, it's very cool.
It doesn't matter how big your role is. You're a Star Trek.
Right.
You're in Star Trek forever.
Once you're in, buddy.
You're
you're in. And the thing is, like, there's such a huge connection between Star Trek and Shakespeare.
Yeah.
The history of the entire show, and so many of the actors in Star Trek and all of its iterations are Shakespearean actors or trained. It's amazing. It's really like, I really wish that somebody would just go ahead and write the book about it or do the documentary about it, so we can stop just guessing. And I'm trying to pull
They're waiting
it
for
all.
us.
Yeah, right.
It's so interesting because I have been thinking a lot about it. I've been thinking a lot about it, and like, why is that? Like, what makes a Shakespearean actor who, in a lot of ways, people would go like, man, we don't want those people on television because, like Shakespeare, like it's got nothing to do with like being a handsome, smart person on television, or I shouldn't say smart, sexy person on television, which is basically what all of it's about, right?
Right.
But Star Trek demands that you have actors who, like, you can't just be a pretty face and do this stuff. You can't. You have to be able to act, but also you have to be able to handle scenes that are really debates, and conversations, and also you have to be able to handle complex technical language as well. The exposition of the, that stuff. Yeah, you got to know that stuff, and it has to feel like you believe it and you understand it. And then I think also a lot of Shakespeare's greatest characters have that duality of the dramatic and the comedic in the same time. Like I performed this version of Hamlet all over the place. And
I was going to ask you about that.
I'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, because inquiring minds want to
know. Because
yes, we do.
So I think we're all big fans of the Bard. So I would love to know, how did that happen?
20 years ago, I premiered a version of Hamlet called Hamlet Solo, which is a solo 2-hour version of Shakespeare's Hamlet.
hours.
And one of the things I learned in doing it is that a lot of people who see it say, "Oh my God, I was very moved by it, et cetera, et cetera." But I didn't know that Hamlet had this much humor in it. And I think that, the great tragedies have funny bits in them. Otherwise, there's nothing, you can't get sad because you've never been happy. Like, it's like a song. It's like a piece of music. And so for me, I think that's something that's contained a lot in Star Trek characters and particularly with the TV series and in the earlier era when you were doing those, when I talked to Bob Picardo about, how many episodes they did of Voyager, how the audience built a kind of totally different relationship with them over 100 or 200 episodes. Like, no matter how successful Starfleet Academy is like, I don't think you'll be able to see, Caleb in the 10th year of school. Like, I don't think it's going to happen.
Right.
Even if the show went on for, there'll have to be a progression of graduates and a progression of instructors. But, with those shows of that era that had so many episodes, you got to see characters, I think, and you needed to see characters. Sometimes, you'd see a dramatic character in a comedic situation or vice versa. You couldn't just kind of silo them, and you couldn't have actors who didn't understand what comedy is while you're doing Star Trek. Like, you have to know, because it's full of humor. And I sort of think in some ways, maybe that's what makes, Shakespearean trained actors anyways, good fit, because they have to have all those things we talked about. And one of them is they have to be able to have the comedic and the dramatic at the same time. So with Hamlet Solo, it was a kind of a weird idea I had when I was an actor in theater school. And then I developed it with a friend of mine who's a director based out in New York, but we went to the same high school together here in Canada. And I've toured it on and off for 20 years. I've done it in England. I've done it in off-Broadway. I've done it in the Arctic. I've done it I've done it in almost a football field. Like, I've done it.
Wait. Go back.
He said it.
I think I saw that.
You cannot skip the Arctic.
Was that in the Instagram post you did about your parka? Was that in the Arctic one?
Yeah, it was. I was in
Parka was fantastic.
I was in Whitehorse. I was in Whitehorse in the Yukon, and it was January. And I had one of these big parkas that I saw film crew guys and gals buy, Canada Goose, not the hip little jackets that are $500 that all the kids wear, but no, ridiculous Arctic Explorer things. And I bought one of those, and I showed up on the first day, and people from town looked at me and they said, "Oh, you must be a Southerner." And I was like, "No, hell, that's the first time I've ever been called a Southerner." He said, "You must be a Southerner." And I was like, "What do you mean?" They said, "We never wear those parkas up here, man. That's just you jackasses come up here wearing those clothes." And I was like, "All right, well, I just didn't want to be cold." And that day, it was probably only about -10 centigrade.
Only.
And they were they got their jackets open. They're just, they're like, "That's nothing." Almost the next day, it goes down to between -40 and -50 centigrade. That's as cold as you can get. The sliding doors on the hotel freeze, and they have to put up plywood. And I'm walking around in this giant thing, and I'm warm as I don't know what, man. And I just had the best. I was walking around. I had a 40-minute walk in -50 in my stupid jacket, but man, I was warm. And then I did a tour of the Northwest Territories, and it was the first and I think only professional Hamlet that's ever been presented up there. I was flying into these different towns, and there's a company there called Buffalo Airways, and they take old airplanes. So I went in one of my trips, I was flying in a DC-3 that was used in the Second World War. They keep these planes running. I was on it, and I was on it, and I was like, I just happened to look at my phone, and I was like, "Oh, my phone works." And the guy's like, "Yeah, first of all, we're flying too low for it not to work."
Right.
And then also, there's no instrument on this plane that thing is going to screw up. So anyways, all that to say, I've had these amazing experiences bringing this play to schools and to theaters and big theaters and little theaters and small communities, big communities, and sharing, this really kind of amazing play. And here's the crazy thing that happened is about 3 years ago in the pandemic, I was shooting a series here called Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol.
Yeah.
And I was in the back of a van. My character was the sort of hitman guy. And I have a gun to Eddie Izzard, now going by Susie Izzard's head.
Uh-huh.
And we're sitting there for like, as you do sometimes, we're sitting there for like 5 hours in the back of the van. Like I'm like this, and the camera's not on us. There's all this other action and stuff going on. And we just start talking. And, Susie's an incredible person, incredible talent, genius type person. And she looks at me and says, well, as a trans woman, they're never going to let me do Hamlet. So I'm going to do a solo version of Hamlet. And I was like, wow, well, you're not going to know this, but I spent the last, at that point, 15 years doing a solo Hamlet. She was like, oh, wow. You done it too? And I said, yeah. So we talked about it. And then eventually I went to go see her do it in New York. And now she's literally touring. She was in Toronto last week. She's touring all over the world, going everywhere with the show. Every theater I ever tried to get my show in, she's running. So I'm on a little relax until the world famous stand-up comedian's done her run at it.
Right.
Then I'll do it again.
Good for you. Good for you.
Oh my God. When I was reading about that, I was just like, I was trying to imagine the sheer amount of work that would go into that production, just from the editing of the text alone to something that one person can do. And then were you doing all the roles? How were you making decisions about what to include and what not to include?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'd say anytime you go see any production of Hamlet, you're always seeing somebody's version. There's no real definitive singular version. So everyone kind of cuts it and shapes it to the way they want. While I was working on my solo version, I was in a production playing Laertes and the player Queen. So that production really got into my head because I was in rehearsal for weeks and weeks and in a run for weeks and weeks. So I stole an awful lot from that production. And I already knew two of the parts. And then also, of course, as an actor, at different times in your life, you've been doing scenes of Hamlet and speeches of Hamlet and all that. So I kind of had these few little outposts of the play that I knew. And then just very slowly over about 5 years of workshops and on and off, I started with the director, working on little bits. In terms of how we do it, we do it with there's no scene change, there's no costume changes, no props, no lighting changes, really, no recorded sound. It's I call it Shakespeare Unplugged, like that MTV series.
Okay, yeah.
It's like Tony Bennett with a piano. There's no orchestra, there's no nothing.
Right.
It's just it's really stripped down to its essential storytelling. And after it's a challenge with the audience, of course, because when the play starts, even though I literally call it Hamlet and then in brackets solo, every time I do it when it starts, and I just address the lights are up a little bit in the audience so I can see them and they can see me. It's kind of quite a communal experience of sharing the story. Even though it's called Hamlet Solo and they could look at 20 years of press, there's always someone when I come out and I start doing it and they see me playing, in the opening scene, 4 different people. I see them kind of go oh my God, oh Jesus, no. This guy's going to do the whole thing like this. Oh my God, this is going to be either impossible to understand or it won't be any good or why is my wife dragging me to this thing? And, but if you stick with it past those, like any Shakespeare, if you can get through the first 5 or 10 minutes of all the stuff getting set up, or say the first few episodes of a Star Trek season, then, it starts to reward you in different ways because you have the context and you have the story and all that. So yeah, we kind of developed a vocabulary and the style of it. If people get to see it, I hope they do someday before I'm too old to do it anymore, that we almost thought of it like a movie where it just cuts from character to character. And after you get used to what a character sounds like and how a character moves, then when it cuts from one to the other, you start to be able to follow it. And in fact, the paradox of the show, and I guess I wouldn't be doing it for 20 years if this wasn't the case, but I've had many people say to me that it's the clearest version of the play they've ever seen. Because they follow it and you have to listen in a different way. I think of it almost like when you read in a novel, your imagination is doing all this extra work and you're making all your own connections. Your experience of it is different from her experience of it because so it's kind of like that, the viewer has to do quite a bit of work. So, but usually for most audiences, it's pretty rewarding by the end. And then people go, man, I didn't know I could understand Shakespeare like that, which to me is kind of one of the big goals awesome. Is that people know what he's talking about when it's over. Because everyone, people are so intimidated by the language. And in school, come on, I mean, you had to be really lucky in high school to have a teacher who could really communicate it like how it's acted. Now, people can explain it, which is totally great, and we need it explained. But really, Shakespeare is supposed to be heard, and it's supposed to be performed. It's not really supposed to be read.
Read, yeah.
So,
performed.
So that
was how I started to learn Shakespeare.
Same.
When I was reading in high school. I had a good friend of mine, Alexi, and she and I would call each other each night, and we would read it together out loud.
Out loud. That's it. That's it. Perfect.
And that's how I started to understand. And then that's when I really recognized the beauty, a lot of the beauty of what was written. Because I'm a word whore. Like I love words, and if somebody's expressing ideas to me in a way that I've never seen before, or making me understand a concept that I think I understand in a new way, I'm like, I'm all sorts of jazzed. So that's what was happening. Like when Alexi and I would try to, we would read Shakespeare together when we had Shakespeare assignments, and then I would understand it. But if I was looking at it on the written page again, I would have issues. And we would sit there with our copies of the Old English, the Oxford English Dictionary.
Yes. Good for you.
The most thorough copies that we could find, know. And start doing word searching research, like what did this mean? Then to go back as far as we could to figure out, that, I mean, if I could get paid to just do it and not have to produce any scholarly work for it, I would do it.
Yeah, my first encounter with Shakespeare was because I'm from New York, and they have Shakespeare in the Park. Well,
of course, I think
it was called Free Shakespeare back then. It was really free. And they definitely made sure back now it's free, but is it really free? But then it was free, and little kids, they made sure little kids can come and actually sit. Like we would have our little section. So that's how I came to Shakespeare. My mother was very big at Shakespeare. I still have her Hamlet. It's like this book wonderful. I can't reach right, but this book is tiny, and it's like the pages. I don't even want to turn the pages anymore because I feel like they're just gonna crumble. So I just keep it up there. But yeah, that's how I got into Shakespeare, is just from watching it. And I don't know if I understood it, but like you said, there was funny parts, and the way they performed it, there was a lot of physical comedy also with it, and a lot of physical movement, and I think we caught on. After a while.
My argument too is that, when I had a really cool opportunity in 2002, I actually got this thing called the Christopher Plummer International Fellowship, and I went to Shakespeare's Globe in London, and I got to work in Shakespeare's Globe for the summer. Wow. And they had an international company with actors from all over the world, and we got to work together, and we had a night where we got to be on the stage and put on our stuff. And at that time, Mark Rylance, who's now like Academy Award nominated actor, but he was the artistic director back then. And one cool thing I realized when I was there and what they spoke about is that Shakespeare's plays were also performed for a really wide range of people in that society. Yeah. The king or queen might have been sitting there, who would have been some of the best educated people, or should have been some of the best educated people in the nation, right? They would have had they would have known everything about the Bible, Greek mythology, Roman mythology. They would have known all of that. So when Shakespeare's layered all that in, they would understand it on that level. And then there would be other people who, for most of their life, would have only heard the Mass in Latin and may not really have understood any of it.
Right.
But would have known kind of like the stories of the Bible from oral conversations, or would have heard some of the myths of the Romans or the Greeks in little pieces. So Shakespeare's plays it's not like they were performed all for PhDs either. They were performed for regular people of the day who had all kinds of different experiences. So when people come to me and go like, oh yeah, like I saw the Shakespeare play and I didn't understand all of it, I was like, hey, that's totally fine. Because even Shakespeare's audience, not everyone knew what exactly every poetic alliteration was or reference was. But it's more that you had that feeling that you had as a kid where, there were things in there that were able to reach you and resonate with you, and that's how it connected. And I think that's why his plays have lasted for so long, and that's why, some people think we've overdone it with the Shakespeare, but that's hard to say to an actor. An actor's never going to be like, oh no, let's study somebody else. It's like, no, he's got everything we need.
Right.
But
The human experience is right there.
yeah, and that's just good storytelling. And again, that's kind of what I think a bit about Star Trek is that, it's not just action adventure. It's not just what my friend calls competence porn. It's not just.
That's such a good phrase.
That's so good.
It's not just any of those things. It's all of those things together.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's one of the reasons why, as I've learned from being on Starfleet Academy, that's also why people as fans, not only do they have this possible 60-year relationship to the franchise, but also people draw different things from these stories that work for them. And so some people want it to be more space adventure. And you could talk to the next person, they're like, oh, damn, I don't want to see space adventure. That's Star Wars. I don't care about that. I want it to be about the interpersonal dynamics of a crew. And then other people will say, like, well, I want it should be like really moving, deep, emotional stories. That's why I watch anything. So, I kind of think it's a similar, there are some similarities even in that way between Shakespeare and this mass of 718 hours, I'm told, of Star Trek.
I think it's more than that
content.
Nowadays, we got in the Kurtzman era, we got a lot more, added on to there because, there's so much new start. And now there's the little kid show, Scouts that now, how many of us can claim our completist status now because we haven't seen Scouts?
I haven't seen Scouts
It's gone.
Yet.
It's gone. Fran, have you seen Scouts yet?
No, but I do have a Hamlet story.
Oh,
okay.
It's real, but it's real fast. It's not. I'm not an actor, but I look at.
But I play one.
I play one on the podcast. Okay, so I look at this show called Frasier.
Yes, love it.
This show called Frasier.
Little show called Frasier, and there was an episode where Derek Jacobi was on it. Did you remember?
Yes, one of my favorites.
Funniest shit ever.
I love it.
People say how because they did a take on like Star Trek. He's supposed to be he played this android on this side, and they knew him as little boys when he did Hamlet, right? And they said, oh, because people think that they make fun. Actually, they make fun of the brothers. They don't make really fun of the guest stars.
Right.
So they said, well, we're going to produce Hamlet. We're going to produce him because he was one of the greatest Shakespearean actors ever. He turned out to be lousy, y'all. Holy lousy. They tried to get out of it and they, because they had invited all their society friends.
That's funny.
And
that is a great episode. I've forgotten about that episode. Oh my God! Thank you for reminding me. That's so funny. I'm
gonna have to go find that. I'm gonna have to YouTube that episode now.
The greatest Shakespearean actors ever.
I love me some Derek Jacobi.
And he was terrible.
Like in anything,
And then they got the fire marshal to come in. They said that it was overcrowded, and then he saw him. He said, "Oh, you're so and so," because he was
he was a fan.
He was a fan. He said, "Oh no, don't worry about it and everything." So the show went on. The show went on, and it was like, "Oh gosh, what are we gonna do?" It was so bad that the stage-hands had like earplugs. This guy so terrible playing Hamlet.
Wow, that's incredible. That is a great episode, and Derek Jacobi is such a great sport for doing that.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, it was so good, and it's I'm sure it was sort of in reference to Patrick Stewart in a way, right? That Patrick Stewart had been this, he'd been such a acclaimed Shakespearean actor in England, and now he's on TV. And when it was
SyFy show,
that's so great. I have a Derek Jacobi story I can share really quickly.
Let's hear.
In '92, I was in England studying in the summertime at a Shakespeare course, and he got to come in and speak to the group. Ooh. And I asked him, I said, listen, I know this might be a weird question. I was 18, so what do I know? But I said, I've seen your BBC Hamlet. Like, that's the first Hamlet I ever saw. I basically said, how were you so good in that? Like, how did you get so good in it? And he said, oh, well, thanks. But he said, well, when I did that version you saw, I was 40. And I first played Hamlet when I was I think it was Cambridge when I was 17. Mm-hmm. And then I did like an English tour when I was 21. And then I did it at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And then, by the time we saw him do it, he had a 20-year relationship with the play, and that's when they filmed it. And so in some ways that I didn't even know it, but really that's why I'm still doing my show now, because I have the good fortune of having a 20-year relationship with that play. And so, it does kind of change and mature and get better as you get better as an actor and you have experiences as a person. You kind of get to bring that to it. So I'm excited. I mean, I'm happy if anyone's seen it at any time, but I had someone see it who saw it about 2 years ago, and they'd seen the first go of it.
Oh, wow.
And it was pretty interesting for them to be like, oh, yeah, to see someone who's, at that point, 18 years older doing the same piece. I mean, it's still the same. The blocking is the same, but in another way, it's totally changed because you change as a person.
You've changed with you, yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that, what's the whole time we've been sitting here talking about the solo production of Hamlet and the stage career and stuff. I've been thinking about you as a musician, and I've been thinking about the relationship with the audience in all these different endeavors, on your different versions of your stages, and I've been thinking specifically because the question in my mind when I first found out that the half Irish, half Indian guy raised in Canada, born in Britain, chose was called to the blues was what the fuck, like how, tell me how, right? But then I'm also thinking about the call and response of the blues is so interactive. I mean, and it's out of our tradition that you don't just get up there and play ding 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 and and the audience is immobile and I mean hopefully like there's interaction between the audience and the musicians, and that makes the whole thing. And so I'm just thinking about all of those different forms of interaction that you're achieving, and it seems like you're because the solo version of Hamlet, there has to be that the intimacy and the interaction with the audience there. That has to be pretty intense too. It's different from other stage productions. I don't know. You tell me.
Yes. Yeah. And it's true. It is performed basically to the audience, but it's funny because people have said to me throughout my life, like, well, how can you do Shakespeare and play blues? Like, that's weird. And to me, it's like, well,
awesome.
it's the same coin. It's just two different sides of the same thing. It's about it. I mean, blues to me, and of course, the only reason I play blues is because of all the people who've come before and shared it with the world. And, the artists who I've got to meet and play with, and the African-American artists I've got to work and play with. And I have a friend in Mississippi who we brought to Canada a couple times to play, and he plays all over the world. And I've got to go to Clarksdale a couple times and hang out there and sort of learn about where it came from, or one of the places it came from. And, ultimately for me, blues is about telling a story, and it's in relationship to the audience. So, as a performer, like people ask me, well, what are you, an actor, musician? I just say I'm a performer.
Right.
And people ask me what I do. And most of the time I'm just involved in telling a story. So in Star Trek, I'm telling the story. In Hamlet Solo, I'm telling the story. Yesterday, I was playing at a blues club in a tiny little town 2 hours from where I live here in Canada. And it was for, 65 people. And I was playing all kinds of music for them, but it was all blues and jazz. And that was just telling a story. So, blues to me, a lot of people who love blues who aren't from the African-American tradition, or it's not in their family, or it's not music that they grew up liking, a lot of us, a lot of us talk about it being the blues bug, like it bit you. It like, it got you somehow. Like it really, for blues fans and for people who are musicians, like, of course, in some ways it makes no sense. But I guess you could say, well, why does somebody from Japan like Beethoven? Like it hits them and it does something to them, and it means something to them,
I also think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just
because you got me thinking about it too. It also makes perfect sense in a way too, because you come from, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't know how it was growing up for you, but you're a mixed kid, of color, in a place like in places that, regardless of what everybody says, still have issues with color, and, I feel like there's something about the blues speaking to the soul that way, maybe too, like I don't see it so surprising that the blues called to you. Right. And, there's that whole Irish half, and Irish people know about oppression, so, like,
I come from two colonized people.
Yeah, you do.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah, but no, I think you're right. And I mean, I'm glad you can see it, and it makes sense. I actually, I got so curious about it that about 10 years ago, I wrote a play that had a band in it, and my friend Divine Brown, who's a great R&B singer and just overall vocalist from Canada. I wrote a play called Life, Death, and the Blues, which I toured across Canada. We did 100 performances of it, and it was basically a story about, how does this beige kid get into Black music, and then also like where are the lines between appropriation and like respecting it, and and we took it to places and again performed it and had some of those conversations that, no one had ever, most of those theater audiences, if they even knew what blues was, like they'd never thought like, oh, blues is Black music, I guess. Yeah, well, of course it is, but like, what does that mean? And that was pretty much what our play was about, which was that I was sort of making the argument that, blues is a contribution to civilization, like the pyramids are to ancient Egypt. They're both on the delta. They're both Delta cultures, and we can't see. We're so close to the blues, and what it helped birth in terms of jazz music, country music, pop music, rock music, everything, that we can't necessarily see how important it is, and because it came from a community that was, of course, oppressed and neglected and undermined and is still being undermined all the time, that we can't appreciate what that is. But that was sort of what the play was about. And it's, so for me it was and part of me researching it was going to Memphis and going to Clarksdale and meeting people there and just trying to understand it in a context where it wasn't just like, because there's one part of people playing blues, which is who aren't from the African-American experience or diaspora, where it's like, oh, well, it's music, it's universal, and the amazing thing about blues is it's gone all over the world. There's people playing it everywhere. Yeah. But I think if anything's happened in the last few years that I think is valuable is that people have been forced to think more about where it comes from and what it came from, as opposed to just going, well, I can play 12-bar blues too. And I have to say, in summation on this topic, I think Sinners is the most important film that's happened
I was
about
thinking
blues.
about it.
We were going there.
We were going there, all of us.
That segment,
yes.
he takes to explain. I swear to God, like people in blues music, white, Black, brown, we have for years been trying to articulate what he does so poetically in that. Yeah. And now I think, wow, there's going to be like hundreds of millions of people in the history of humanity who are going to watch that and go like, oh, yeah, that's how that worked. I was like, phew. Like, thank you, Ryan. Like, I know you got other stuff to do. You got to make some other cool movies, but I think that's the most important thing that's been said about blues music. And that film is the most important thing said about blues music, maybe in the history of Hollywood. The other big movies were stuff like Crossroads and the Blues Brothers. But those were always about a white person sort of finding being
their
accepted
experience
or their way
with
into it.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, all these kids, like I thought, and there's a really cool thing happening in the blues now, where there's been an opportunity for a new generation of like 20-year-old kids who are embracing blues and not going, oh, this is Uncle Tom music or this is my great granddad's music. They're going, oh no, this is ours.
This is our music.
Really cool. Yep. And I'm from Georgia and this music is part of my culture. I'm going to learn how to play this stuff from the 1930s and watch out. And I mean, that's been the most amazing thing for me, because I think a lot of us have felt a little bit like our job has been, and the generation of white guys who played above me, who some of them were big influence on me, like, and some of those guys who are, now 70 in their 70s, they got to work with Muddy Waters. They got to see Howlin' Wolf live. I didn't get to have that experience. So they became my bridge, these white guys. But a lot of us feel like we were kind of just keep throwing wood on the fire to just make sure it was kept going. Now I'm so excited because when I see 25-year-old kids who are really embracing it as their own, and then I see a movie like Sinners, I'm like, wow, there could be a whole new wave of people who get into this music, which as far as I'm concerned is completely amazing and still kind of undiscovered for so many people. And the root of everything. You know, Chuck D used to talk about how Muddy Waters was one of his great influences.
Yep.
And I'm
That's
like,
right.
hey man, if Chuck D said it, that's all you need to know.
There was no rock and roll without the blues.
Of course not.
You know, I mean, everything that is culturally significant in our music. There was no jazz without the blues. It was the blues is the root of it. And I tell you, in Sinners, that moment when Delroy Lindo, they're in the car and Delroy Lindo's telling the story about his friend, and then and he just says, and he brings and that is the blues. And I'm like, if you don't understand that, if you don't understand any of these words coming out, that moment. That hits you right there. That's the blues right there.
Yeah.
And how many other people get to see that? And then as you talk about the Irish, then he brings that whole element in where people hear that. And here's a fun little other connection in the funny world of connections. My friend Super Chicken, who I brought up and who plays and like he's a folk artist. He's got the Mississippi Governor Awards, Arts Award.
I know that. I know his name. Yeah,
he's been on the Blues Cruise a bunch of times, which is the Blues People's version of the Star Trek cruises.
Yes. Right? I think Tony goes on that one, doesn't he?
Oh, cool. And he makes his own instruments and everything. He's an amazing guy. And Super Chicken, in the scene in Sinners, when they're at the train station, just before he goes to meet Delroy's character at the train station, Michael B. walks by and there's a guy playing guitar and he throws some change in the thing and the guy goes, hey man, and he goes, thank you, sir. And it's just in the background. That's Super Chicken.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And I mean, and this is a guy who,
like 5 times, and I bought it, so I know that didn't slip by us at all.
Yeah, so that's awesome. That's Ryan. Let alone at the end of the movie, the Buddy Guy's in it, and Christone Kingfisher, who's from Clarksdale. Let alone those guys are in it. But even Super Chicken, man, who has been in the trenches of the blues since he was born down there.
They didn't miss a beat. They really didn't.
To me, that's one of the other fun moments for me where I'm like, wow, Super Chicken. And in a funny sci-fi way, I was just thinking today before I talked to you guys, I was like, Super Chicken was up here. No, I was down there visiting him, and I had on a season 1. We only did one season of it, but I did a show for SyFy called The Dresden Files.
Don't even get me started. Stop. Okay.
So I was in The Dresden Files.
I love those books. I love that show.
And we only did one season, which was and
I cried.
And I had the season 1. I had the season 1 like zip up jacket that says Dresden Files on it. And it was sort of wet and cold one day, and Super Chicken, he was looking at my jacket, and I said, he's like, yeah, that's a nice jacket. I said, cool. And I said, it's from this TV show I did. And he's like, oh, cool. And I said, do you want it? And he said, I don't. Like, okay, sure. And so I gave him my jacket. So I have this vision that somewhere down in Clarksdale, Mississippi, there's a season 1, and there's got to be 5 of them left in the world. There's a season 1 SyFy Channel Dresden Files jacket on, and only people like the SyFy Sistas would be like in Clarksdale and be like, hey, I know exactly what that jacket is.
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
That's so awesome. So I know we're running low. We're getting low on time. We're running low.
Talking about Star Trek yet? You're going to get in trouble. People are going to listen to this. Why the hell is he talking about blues and Hamlet, man? What about our Star Trek content?
This is fine.
They know best. They know better. If they're listening to the SyFy Sistas, they know they're going to get a discussion that they're not going to get in any other Trek podcast.
Yeah.
Your next show, the next podcast, you could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, and we could get let's give the big ups though, because like we did that a little bit before we got on air. Yeah. And, the fact of the matter is that we do love your portrayal of this character in Starfleet Academy. When I saw your face come on the screen, I screamed because I've seen you in so many different things. And because I watch so much stuff that comes out of Canada, it's I was so excited to see you and and you just do this amazing job. Like you really, like he could have been so one-dimensional. It was. I mean, granted, there's great writing on this show. I love the writing on Starfleet Academy, but I think you humanize him in such a beautiful way.
I love your facial expressions with him too.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. I'm like, look at this guy.
Well, I think in a lot of the cases with Kelric, particularly in those early episodes before he gets to know Nala, there's a lot he can't say. Because you think of the thing that's interesting to me about Kelric is, there's a lot interesting. First of all, thank you for saying that. And I'm always amazed when anybody says, oh, you're that guy I've seen in other things. Because, of course, as an actor, you feel a lot of the time completely anonymous and you don't think anybody's ever seen anything you've been in. So thanks for that. And, I've been lucky to be in the, I think even Starfleet might be exactly, like the way IMDb counts it, I think Starfleet Academy might be either exactly my 150th credit, or
I think it is,
very near that number. It's like 149 or 151 or something. So there's a poetry to that, which is kind of sweet, considering it's such a big job for me, and it is such a big show. But the thing about Kelric is that, and it's funny because when we got to the end of season 1, we had like a kind of, and we knew we were doing season 2. We had kind of like a debrief, with Alex and Noga, and I was on a Zoom with them, and I was kind of like, performance. I kind of felt like they didn't treat it like it, but I felt it was like a performance review, right. How can I, what can I change, or how can I be better? That's what I wanted to know. And Alex said, no, we love what you're doing. And Noga said, no, it's great. And Alex looked at me and on the Zoom and he said, it's actually a very difficult part, and we think you do a great job. And it's funny because I love the part so much, and I love, you guys will particularly appreciate this. To be the kind of like conservative white guy on the show is actually really funny, because people say to me like I was seeing something online and people, and people were freaking out about how diverse it is or whatever.
Yeah.
Someone was like, it's full of all these diverse people, woke, all this crap. And then someone posted my face as like, oh, there's no like old white guys on the show, and then there was like a big picture of my face. And I was like,
I saw that.
I'm the conservative white guy. It's happened. Mom, it's me. I'm the conservative white guy. Holy, times have changed. Or it'll only happen in the 32nd century. But one of the fun things about the character for me is I think, or what I think anybody can relate to, is like, imagine you're pretty successful at your job. You run a pretty successful business or company or school. And then from way on up, they say, oh, you're merging with another school. And you have a co-chancellor who's a higher rank than you. So I'm a commander and she's a captain.
Yep.
And then that person is also someone who left your organization or your movement kind of in disgrace, but also sort of under weird circumstances. And that's the person who's going to come back and be in charge. And I think it puts Kelric in such an interesting place at the beginning of the season, because of course he feels threatened. Of course he feels like totally undermined, and he's worried about his future, but also I think he's someone who of course believes in the ideals of Starfleet. But he's someone who is born into the world of the burn. He's got there's no context of him for him of like, and because he's in the war college, I mean, I think I've thought about it a lot. Like, I think a lot more cadets, the survival rate in the post-burn war college era is not what it used to be in Starfleet 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it's been a much more fractious, bloody, terrible time. So the fact that there's this movement to kind of reopen this chapter, in one way he gets it. He's like, sure, I understand. It's like, that's an ideal way to be. But I think he's very skeptical that we're in a time where we're ready. So for me, that's what I was kind of thinking, is that
he's trepidatious. He's cautious.
Yeah.
And then the fact that the person they choose doesn't wear shoes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
that was hard for me to swallow too.
It took a while. It took a while.
He wasn't alone.
As a veteran,
Right. Yeah.
As a veteran. It took me a minute. Oh, I had to talk. I think Tamia had to talk me off the ledge. Because I was like, wait, what is happening with her? Why is she in that seat?
What is happening to my captain's chair? Like, how is it? Like, I know.
It's incredible. But you see how it, I mean, I do think it's a credit to the show that, and I mean, again, I love the passion people have for this franchise. It's like nothing I've ever experienced, but also it's like, like it, not everything is answered. Of course, there's no way to answer all the things everybody wants to answer. There's no way, but there has been a lot of thought put into it. There is a progression. You don't see her in episode 9 walking around in her casuals, and you don't see her walking around in her bare feet as much because she also had to, like, the character of Nala, and Holly is such a great actor that like all those details she's thought about too. They're not arbitrary. Nothing is arbitrary in her presentation. She's thinking about 10 episodes. She's thinking about how Nala will progress. We're all thinking about that. How will Kelric change and grow and evolve? And then now into season 2, like, how is he different? How are the circumstances making him different? How will that change or alter his behavior? So I think what's so fun in the beginning for us is that they really are oil and water. And he doesn't think this is a good idea, but he understands his place, and he understands the ideal of what we're trying to do here, and it's an order. So for Kelric, in Kelric's world, there isn't this. He's even sort of more troubled, I think, by the idea that cadets are going to have this kind of agency in Starfleet Academy, because you can see in the War College, a superior officer tells them what to do, and they do it.
They do.
And Nala's trying to introduce this world, which is from this previous era of Starfleet, where it's much more of, that she knew it's much more about questioning authority and questioning tradition and questioning the ideas that have kept us alive. And I think for Kelric, that completely freaks him out, because he's just like, I don't. And in fact, I was looking back on the scene, the first scene we have in my quarters, which is in the Vitus Reflux episode, where she comes in and we kind of have our standoff, where I first give her the tea. And there was a little cut that they made, but there was a little section in there where Kelric says to her, do you, you've seen, it's something, he says something like, he kind of implies, like, how can you behave this way? You've seen war, you've seen tragedy, you've seen basically what our universe is like. And how can you let them act this way? And that was removed. Either I acted it badly, or they cut it for time, or they wanted to, again, let that kind of play out more later. But to me, that was a really useful bit for Kelric that at least I had before when we were shooting it, is that it really helped me understand where Kelric was coming from, which is that, like, the world our cadets are in is too dangerous for us to behave this way. And she's really challenging that and laying her whole reputation on the line. And that's kind of a progression, I think, of the series, which is interesting, which is Kelric trying to understand her way, her trying to understand his way, and them slowly, ever so slowly, particularly when we get to episode 6, where the crap really hits the fan. I love episode 6 because after the craziness of him being almost kind of humiliated in episode 5 during his dinner, like, they're trying to help him because he's really got to learn to relax, or he's going to screw up his diplomatic dinner. So they are trying to help him, but it really gets him. They really have to take him down for him to grow. In episode 6, when the crap hits the fan, I like that. It's important to me because you see that, okay, these guys are on the same team.
Yes.
And the priority is their cadets, the safety and the welfare of their cadets. And he's a little less, because again, I know some people were like, oh, this guy's like a clown. Like, what's the deal? Like, how could this guy possibly run the War College? And I feel like in 6, and as the episodes move on, you're like, oh, yeah, of course. Like, he's a commander in Starfleet.
People are too harsh with their criticisms anyway, like, I mean, like, Because he wasn't like, he was all the things that you said. Like he was responding to the era, and he was responding to the need that was right and appropriate for that time. And and it was like we were having a discussion about the worthiness of Deep Space Nine, and with Rod, with Rod Roddenberry, we were talking about Deep Space Nine and the way that we were framing the existence of Deep Space Nine and how it's different from the other Star Trek Enterprise was the fact that it was the Star Trek that was for our time, our generation, Gen X. We were the recipients. Our parents had gone through the Vietnam War and the Korean War and all this stuff, and we had seen COINTELPRO. We had seen the MOVE bombing. We had seen the infiltration of crack and into our societies. Like we were not going to be the same. We had seen the optimism of Live Aid, and turned into dust, and then we saw the Ethiopian famine, and we saw the blood diamond wars, and we were not going to be the generation that was going to be producing this hopeful, optimistic, like all the problems are solved Star Trek. We're going to be. It comes out of what we've experienced. We're shell shocked at this point. So like how the hell, we got PTSD from growing up in the 80s and living through the 90s, and so like what are we producing? It's not going to be everything's rosy Star Trek. It's going to be how do we hold on to this fragile piece that we have?
And there's going to be conflict, and they're going to solve them.
Right. So, and you're still going to use the Star Trek philosophies to get through and to guide you. Right. But your responses and reactions are going to be a little bit different. And I see Kelric in that same sort of vein. Like you were saying, the burn was traumatic. Like she's coming in like a friggin' space hippie, and he's like, what the hell? Yeah, well, this is impractical. People are going to die. With you. Like
I mean, he said it. I mean, I think the one scene that I love about him that was, he told her, he goes, you're doing all this, but you left. Yeah, you just abandoned us, and now here you are. You're back. And I felt that.
That's the biggest. That's the biggest sin is that, like he'll. I don't think he could ever imagine leaving. There's no leaving Starfleet for him. Right. And I think, we don't hear at this point a lot about his family, his relationships, his background. Yeah. He is Starfleet. Yes, that's his whole existence. That's his whole life. That's the whole reason he is anywhere.
Right. I mean, you're just like every other Starfleet person that we've met throughout the 60 years. I mean, Jean-Luc Picard was Starfleet. He was nothing but Starfleet. So was Kirk. So that's what I saw when I saw him, and that line, I was like, that's my guy. That's my guy.
Good. I feel good. Great.
I can't hear you, Fran. Say it again.
I said, Janeway had to be Starfleet.
Right.
Because she followed because they wanted to go against her. Well, not in whatever she said, but we're still Starfleet.
Yeah. She had captains. All the captains. Yep.
Yeah, so I say the criticism is far too harsh. I say all the criticism heaped on this show is far too harsh, but I've said that throughout every iteration of new Trek and all the Trek that has come before me, because you just have these people out there who just want to bitch and moan about stuff all the time. That's
and the way I see it too is like I'm fine with, and I think also social media and technology makes it so easy for us to share our opinions. Like this is a good example of it, right? Like, look at us. We're in different parts of the country, the continent, and we're able to share this thing, and you're able to then broadcast this and share it. Like all those gatekeepers and all those ways of stopping us from doing this are gone. Great. But also, we've got a social media engine that works on negativity and amplifies controversy, right? So I'll see somebody's podcast that's like a conversation like this, and then I'll see someone with a crazy graphic and some misogynistic, racist, or homophobic thing in their title, and it'll have way more views,
a gazillion views, right?
Yeah, and I sort of go like, that's the part of it that it's the misogyny, it's the racism, the homophobia. That's the part of the conversation that I have no time for, and I think it's important for people to call out.
Yep.
And the rest of it is opinion and fan. I like this part, I didn't like that part. Of course, that's fine. And I do think, I didn't really, I didn't really understand like where the franchise was at the moment and where people were at with new Trek versus old Trek. Like, I didn't really understand any of that until I started to step into this world, and I was like, whoa, okay, this is bigger than me, definitely. And in a way, it's bigger than the show. And in some ways, it's like, oh, this is also like, as you were saying about like, what's the cultural moment we're in? Like, a lot of what's going on is also about the cultural moment we're in. You hope over time that people can reflect on this show and reflect on this in a different way. But I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the people who work on it. And I'm really proud of the kids on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, not only are they thrust into the biggest job of their lives, but they're also thrust into, some of these conversations that, I mean, whatever controversy people had to deal with in previous Star Trek, there's nothing like these 25-year-old actors have to face in this show. Where you got Elon Musk and Stephen Miller making comments about the work you're doing.
And that's truth right there.
That's right.
That's crazy.
That's
Imagine
ridiculous.
being 25 years old and having that as like a component of your work experience.
Yeah,
and you're also identified and reachable because you have to have a social media presence and all that stuff. So the way the kids have handled it, I call them kids just because I'm old and they're kind of the age of they're a little bit older, but they're close to the age of my own children.
They're definitely the age of my children.
Yeah. So and these kids have come together also. I was thinking of this today. The actors have come from different parts of the world, from very different experiences, very different backgrounds. They've all been brought to this place, which is, except for Romeo, who plays Occam, and Dale and Kyle, and Dale, who plays Kyle. All the other, our main cadets, are from the place where this thing is shot. They've all come to this city of Toronto where it's shot. And they've all bonded, and they're away from their families, and they're away from their communities, and they're away from their countries, and they're away from their cultures. And they've had to find a way to work together to make this thing. I mean, that's the story of Starfleet Academy, is what these actors are living. And to have seen them in the last 18 months, I was on the first walkthrough before Sandro was even finalized and cast. We went through a walkthrough of the set while they were building it. And, George Hawkins is just out of theater school in England. So he's coming from Australia and never been anywhere near Canada before or North America before, and you're here together and you're seeing them grow as people and as artists. And for me, that's just been a beautiful thing to see what they've accomplished so far. And it's really like the show. The way they've bonded on the show is the way they bonded as people. And I'll credit that to Alex. Alex is cast. And I do think he's careful in casting his shows that, Holly is a leader. Holly is our captain. These kids, they're good people who work really hard to work together well and really take their job seriously. And Holly sets the bar so high for all of us. Me too. Even a guy who's been doing it for 30 years, like, okay, Holly's here. Like the bar is high for everybody. Giamatti walks on set and you're like, easiest going guy you'll ever work with, man. Totally down to earth, totally free and easy. But when the camera's on, I mean, that guy's incredible.
Yeah.
So for these young actors to get to work in this environment and to work with those kinds of actors, and maybe even an actor like me, but no, for them to work with people of that caliber, I think it's going to be great for them for the rest of their lives. They will never forget this experience, and it will shape them the way that you hope Starfleet Academy would shape our young cadets.
Would shape. Yeah,
I agree.
I agree. I love everything that you just said, and like in closing, I just want to say, like, well, Number one, I hope you can get on the Star Trek cruise, because it's awesome. And Gina Yashari was on the cruise with us, and she was talking about how it really restored her faith in humanity, because like those people out there who are these naysayers and these bots, it's a very vocal minority. It is not reflective of our fan base, and it is not, at all. It's just people out there trying to start trouble. The true Trekkies, which are far outweigh these people.
Well, I believe that, but this I believe was very intentional.
Right.
I believe this is done on a higher level. This was definitely intentional.
This was some bots and some other things.
Yeah, a lot of other. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it became kind of a cultural conversation football to get booted around. And
even before it came on.
So I mean, look, I was in a movie called Miss Sloane with Jessica Chastain, and it was about gun control, and the gun control lobby worked against that film from the moment they heard that thing was going to get made.
Wow.
The NRA was out to get it because they didn't want a movie about gun control, and it happened to come out the week President Trump got elected the first time, and it didn't help that movie one little bit. Wow. Great movie, super fun to do. But, there are, sometimes you think, well, what is it? It's a TV show. What is it? It's a movie. But no, there's an awareness that, a show like ours is doing things that some people don't want stories to do.
Yep.
It's giving platform to people and showing stories. And I mean, gosh, we have a gay Klingon. Oh my God. You'd think that was someone trying to like poison the water supply or something. Like, get a grip, guys. Like, get a grip.
Dad,
Yeah. But for some people, that's they see that as an assault on what they believe. And what can I say? I'm like, it's not my job or my place to tell them what their Star Trek needs to be. I can't really comment on that. That's for them to decide. But yes, I have seen without a doubt that there's a lot of positive energy for the show as well. And it's grown, which is beautiful, as people have gotten into the story more and seen what our storytellers have been trying to do. It's making more sense, and people are embracing it. And I have a friend, Randall Graham, who's a leading legal scholar in Canada, who's done the cruise 6 years in a row.
Nice.
And he's also a novelist, and I've done the audiobook for 2 of his books.
Oh, nice.
And Randall has, from the day he found out I got this job, and I had to be very careful to tell him, but from the day I got this job, he was like, I am going to do everything I can to get you on the cruise. So I know I have people on my side. I know I'll get there one day. No rush. I'm happy to do it whenever.
We would love it. And
because it looks like it's an amazing experience.
It is. It is a really amazing experience. And, I think, it just really helped me. I mean, we just got back off of it, and it really it helps recalibrate me every year, and give me a little bit more strength, and I'm not so worn down, because you feel that hope that Star Trek gives us. It's tangible, because you're with a group of people, a huge amount of people, who are trying to make this world a better place for somebody else in whatever ways we can, And
I saw Bob was sitting in his chair. Bob Picardo was sitting in his chair 2 days before he was leaving, running his lines for the show he'd written for you and all that. So the opportunity to play music on it, or be in some fun little bit, or do something that's totally up my alley, as you can imagine, right? So I was and then I see STLV, and I'm stuff like, there's a whole big band night, and there's a blues night, and I was like, oh
yes, sir.
If people want me, I'll have. There's something I can help out with. I know. If people want me,
we definitely got to get you at STLV too. That's for sure. And the band. I'm dying. I want the and I'm going to say this, and we're going to close, because I know that time is getting I really hope that your band comes to DC and plays at Blues Alley if you haven't played there yet, because Blues Alley is one of the oldest blues and jazz clubs in the country. And it's right here in DC, in Georgetown, and it's a smoke-filled room. And if you ever get the chance to talk to David Ajala, ask him about the conversation we had about Blues Alley.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. I've heard of Blues Alley because on one of my early records, I played with a guy named Big Joe Mayer, who's a drummer singer from the DC area.
Yes.
He had a band called Big Joe and the Dynaflows, and he's on my 2004 record. And I know that's a club that he's played a lot. And I still see Big Joe on Facebook. So my problem is I got an 8-piece band. So sometimes we can barely get out of town. But
look,
listen, you'll see me sooner or later. You'll see me sooner or later.
Just let us know. And don't you forget to tell your sister here in DC that you're coming in town. So we can bring all the SyFy Sistas fans out to come see you.
Well, it's funny. I should say my friend Randall, I'm playing the first week of June at a club that I played here in town in Toronto for on and off for 3 decades, called the Rex Hotel. I'm playing there June 4th, 5th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And the 6th is my birthday.
Okay.
And Randall said, I have friends contact me from the cruise who want to come to Toronto to be there for your 4-night residency. So I'm not saying you guys got to come to that, but listen, there's going to be some Trekkies. There's going to be some Trekkies coming to Toronto. The first
away mission.
I know, right? You are Sisters away mission. Let's go.
You are more than welcome.
Awesome. That would be so cool. So guys, I mean, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a great conversation. We knew it was going to be great because you're fascinating and you're super cool. We're so happy to meet you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm sorry. It's going to be one of the longer episodes, I think. I'm like, oh my God, I told you. I warned you, man. You can't stop me talking. As the great Sonny Boy Williamson song goes, don't start me talking. I'll tell everything I know. He's right here on this glass. That's him. That's Sonny Boy Williamson, the second Rice Miller. Don't keep me talking. I'll tell everything I know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Yvette, you want to let people know all the things SyFy Sistas?
Sure. Thanks for listening to the SyFy Sistas podcast. During the 60th anniversary of Star Trek, we're honored to continue celebrating the franchise we love and to have been named 2025 Best All-Around Star Trek Podcast by Trek Movie. Thank you.
Yeah.
Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/SyFy Sistas and be part of the mothership. Join the conversation in the SyFy Sistas book club on Facebook. Watch our interviews, live shows, and our infamous Top 10 series on YouTube, SyFy Sistas, Inc. The Trek Geeks presenting sponsor is Fansets. Grab pins and memorabilia from all your favorite franchises at fansets.com and use code TrekGeeks, all caps, for 10% off. After listening to this podcast, please rate us and write a review. We may just read it on an upcoming episode.
And of course, I got to thank the baddest associate producers in any and all known galaxies. That's Sailor Marge, Stephanie Baker, and Karen Dramera, and Chris Gaddis. I forgot we have a new associate producer. Whoop, whoop. Thank you, guys.
Welcome, Chris.
Welcome, Chris. Thank you guys for everything. And we love you all. And peace, love, and hair grease, friends.